Hey everybody, and thanks for joining me again for Third Act Stories. So I grew up, like a lot of y'all, in the 60s. If you're in your 60s, you grew up in the 60s. And there was a lot of psychedelic stuff going on in the 60s. By the way, I've got more light here. I had some friends tell me that I looked a little gloomy in the dark, and it was a little too dramatic for them, so I thought I'd put more light on the subject. I've always been of the frame of mind, the less you can see of my face, the better, but we'll see how it goes. If viewership drops down to 0, then I'll know I need to get a little darker environment. Anyway, psychedelics. Growing up in the 60s, when I was a kid, there was a lot of psychedelic stuff in art and entertainment, things like that, and it really was fun. I mean, I wasn't taking the drugs. I don't know if anybody was. I assume somebody was. Now, even though I wasn't taking the drugs as a 6-year-old, people who were about 10 years older than me and beyond were taking the drugs. And those are the people who are running the country right now. So, I don't know if psychedelics turn you into a psychopath. No, I'm not talking to any one particular party. I'm just saying the people that run the country, there may be something wrong with them. So, I don't know if that came from a psychedelic childhood or misspent youth or what it was, but all this stuff, the effect it had on me was fun. Nowadays, entertainment really isn't fun. A lot of it isn't. Growing up, to me, it was fun. We had things like The Yellow Submarine, that was done by Peter Max. And, you see him a lot. You see a lot of his art and prints on cruise ships nowadays. If you go to a cruise ship, if there's a gallery, they're selling Peter Max paintings. So he's still popular. I guess as we get older, we get to where we want things that remind us of our misspent youth. And Peter Max paintings apparently are the thing. But anyway, he used a lot of colors, a lot of, odd images and kind of creepy characters sometimes. But, that was a psychedelic thing that really set the tone for a lot of blacklight posters and a lot of things that were around us growing up. Another thing that I was always fascinated with is I loved lenticular stuff. I don't know if you can see that or not. This is the Green Hornet. It was a ring, I think, that you could get back in the day. But they had everything was a lenticular deal. Nowadays, I think the only thing you can buy that's lenticular is they sell Pope rings at the gift gallery up at the Vatican. But anyway, lenticular stuff was a lot of fun. I still make lenticular backgrounds to some of my displays. It's just a fun thing. Another fun thing was, and I don't think this was more in the 70s, but it was something that was just way out. It was Frito Bandito. I grew up in Texas, and I was near the Frito-Lay factory that produced Fritos. And I remember my daycare used to go there, and we'd get like an entire pack. They'd give us an entire pack of every Doritos, Cheetos, Fritos, whatever they made at the time. And you got these little erasers. And the little erasers were the Frito Bandito. And he had a Crunch Bunch that had W.C. Fields, if I remember, in it, which I didn't quite understand how this crazy Bandito guy was mixed up with W.C. Fields. But anyway, nowadays you could never do this because they would run ads on television. Oh, it's the Frito Bandito, which is, I think that today would be beyond people's delicate sensibilities. Anyway, the Frito Bandito. If you can get anything Frito Bandito, get it, because it was cool. So one other thing, this is another thing. You recognize this guy, right? Frederick Leflute. And he was a major character in something called H.R. Pufnstuf, which the Sid and Marty Croft guys, everything they did was psychedelic. I don't know anything else about them. I haven't researched them. I'm sure there was something creepy going on with this thing. It had witchy poo. It had a crazy dragon. It had a little kid who had fallen into this psychedelic world with all these crazy talking trees and all this stuff. And he had a talking flute. I'd actually ordered a little flute that you could get off a cereal box. That got damaged or thrown away somewhere along the line. But this is a resin kit that I manipulated and got to looking a little bit more like the flute. You know, what was interesting to me about this was when I was 6 years old, my parents took me to something called Hemisphere 68. And Hemisphere 68 had something called the Sid and Marty Croft Kaleidoscope of Puppets, which it was the most insane thing you could possibly imagine. It was a big theater and it was hot. This thing was taking place in San Antonio, Texas. And if you know anything about San Antonio, Texas, it's hot. It's always hot. And you got into the big theater and it was ice cold in the theater. So I like that, number one. And number two, it was just covered with every kind of crazy, colorful thing. This is before the Muppets or any of that kind of stuff. And Sid and Marty Croft had introduced H.R. Pufnstuf was in it. He was called the let's see, he's in, this book is, it's really, I don't know why they printed it. It's got these punch out, what they call puppets and some sort of a rock stage background, which to me just looks like a mess. It cost a lot to print. I get the impression that Sid and Marty Croft were in a hurry to do all this stuff. They got the gig and they just said, what can we come up with for the gig? But anyway, HR was called The Enchanted Dragon. I don't remember the storyline at all. What I do remember is I was sitting on an aisle seat and I'm 6 years old and I'm sitting there going, okay, there's a puppet show. This is great. Well, and it had to be the same lady who played the witch on television. She comes flying out of the ceiling and lands in the aisle right next to me and scares the living crap out of me. Sorry. Beep. She scared me to death. And, you know, because she was screaming and laughing and chuckling, and I had no idea that a lady would come out of the ceiling and land next to me. And then she runs down the aisle and gets into a fight with the dragon or something. I don't know. None of it made any sense. That wasn't the point of psychedelic stuff. You weren't supposed to make any sense out of it. Anyway, this all affected me in better or worse ways, but one of the things, at some point, Houston had a cow parade, and I got to paint one of the cows. And they made a little model of it here, as you can see. I was just kind of making something that sort of was an homage to just creation, the universe, and all that sort of stuff. And it kind of turned out a little psychedelic. So if you look at some of my artwork, some of my paintings and the things I do, I'm bringing some of that fun back into it. I bring the color into it that was popular back in the day. You know, growing up with all that kind of stuff, it gave me a sense of wonder about just there's more to life than what we see. You know, the world is a much more complicated place than we imagine. You know, I'm a Christian, as you know, so I try to steer away from the stuff that's a little dark and say I'm not going that direction, but I'm hanging out over here and going towards the direction of you know, all the wonderful things in life and the positivity that you can get out of being a positive person. Just thought I'd share my little psychedelic story here. I'm recording this on Easter weekend, and please enjoy your Easter weekend. Have a good time, and if you get a mind to, go to church and find out more about the Lord and Savior. We'll see you again on Third Act Stories.